Hi, welcome to another episode of Meet the Author. Tonight we have Karen Ryder, a freelance writer and former Wethersfield resident. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Jason. How are you tonight?
Pretty good. Tell us a little bit about your writing.
Sure. As you mentioned, I am a freelance writer, and I have been publishing in national print and digital magazines for about 3.5 years now, covering holistic health, integrative medicine, and writing tips and trends for authors, both established and aspiring writers. I also am an author of short fiction and recently won honorable mention in an anthology contest and had my first short story published in an anthology.
Was that the first award that you won? Or?
That's the first award I've won for short fiction, and it's the third time I've published a short story.
And how long have you been writing for publications?
I began in 2007, shortly after the birth of my first daughter, and was finally making the decision to pursue what had always been a dream in my heart, to be a writer and be a published author.
Very nice. Now, this is a very important question. We have a thing for artists called an artist statement, and you wrote that you have a writer's vision. So tell me a little bit about what a writer's vision is and what your writer's vision is.
A writer's vision is very similar, as you mentioned, to an artist statement. It's also called a writer's statement, and it's not as common that writers think to put down in words what the essence is of their passion. Why are they writing? Who are they writing for? What does writing mean to them? And it helps solidify for me what writing meant to me and where the passion and hence the motivation to pursue this goal was coming from. So for me, when I write for other people, I aim to write with clarity, integrity, and creativity. When you hire me for a project, whether it's for your website copy or for a magazine article, clarity, integrity, and creativity are how I go about working for and with other people. But deeper than that is my passion, which is to bring words to the page or the screen that enrich, enlighten, and entertain. And I have weaved those 6 key words into my logo, which I think they were going to bring up the website, and you can see it on my website.
What is your website?
KarenMWriter.com. So if you look in the upper, I don't know if that's right or left to the viewer, but the Celtic Triskel,
which you're wearing right
which
there.
I'm wearing a piece of. There's a kind of a mystical story behind where that came from. I decided to make 3 feathers symbolizing the scribe, the plume on the top of a scribe's tool, writing implement, and then the Celtic spirals. And to me, writing is alchemy. There's a mix of passion from the writer, the heart of the story they wish to tell, fiction or nonfiction, and then there's the reader, what the reader is putting into and seeing within the words that a writer puts to page. So it's an alchemical process to me, how stories come together. And that's...
So, read this part right here for the audience. Maybe they can't see that.
Well, I'm inviting the digital viewer to come explore my portfolio, where they will enjoy articles, interviews, and essays on holistic health, writing tips and trends, parenting, and inspired living. You can check out the fiction portfolio, where you'll find stories that weave myth, metaphysics, and suspense with a contemporary plot. And for those of you out there in the viewing audience who need a writer, your assignment could be my next adventure, and I do provide engaging, relevant content on deadline.
And you have written for some famous magazines and writing magazines, so tell us about that.
Well, this is actually a brand new publication. It's called Book Marketing Magazine, and it launched in January, so I was part of the inaugural issue with an article on how to make your author website shine. And it is available on the iPad. You can find it in the iTunes store, and the publishers have done a great job with an interactive publication to help authors at every level of their career understand some of the best ways to market their books.
How did you think about getting your material in the iTunes store? How did you know about that?
Actually, the publisher of that magazine had contacted me after reading my work in another writing magazine. I'm sure many viewers are familiar with The Writer. They've been in print for 125 years, a fantastic publication for the emerging and established author or freelance writer. And The Writer magazine had run a story I had done on how to make your homepage pop. And when that was published, the publisher for Book Marketing Magazine emailed me and said, could you do some writing for us? I really like your style, I like your voice, and I think you make what can be very confusing topics practical for readers. So that's how that began.
That's exactly what they're looking for. And what was in this in the same Writer magazine? You had a different article?
Okay, and then
Shorty. Hey, Shorty.
Hey, Shorty. This is, if you are a writer, you know that there's a lot of confusion about what's trending and what's hot in the different genres. And one area where I was really curious about how things are changing and why they're changing and who's reading what is the short story market. Because now we have things like Twitter stories, 140 characters, 6-word stories, which comes from Hemingway's legendary bet that he could write a story in 6 words. And the legend goes that he was at a round table at a hotel in New York City and wrote a story in 6 words and won the bet, which at that time was $10, I think. But what this article published in the January issue of the Writer magazine shows is some of the challenges and opportunities that writers can find in the short fiction market. And if you understand what those challenges are and you're willing to innovate with your own writing, and there's some tips in here about how to do that and trends that people who know more than I do are seeing in the literary market, then you can do better in targeting the magazines that you submit to and really hone in on how you use your time, using your time effectively to reach those markets.
Now, you write about metaphysical things. Tell us a little bit about, you're writing a story where Gillette Castle is involved in the story or is the backdrop for the story, and you brought a little bit of that story here to read to us. Actually,
I brought an excerpt from Rachel's Garden, which is the story that just won honorable mention in an anthology contest.
And that wasn't the one with...
No, that's not the. No,
one.
that's a short story.
Okay, so
what's happening with the Gillette Castle is actually a novel in progress. But we could talk about either one, whichever way you'd like to go first.
So you brought an excerpt from Rachel's Garden. Again, it's that metaphysical which you write about. And before we say that, you said something about the Celtic lore. Does that have something to do with this? Or
yes.
Okay, so what's the
I'm very
with that?
intrigued in retelling and recasting both Celtic and Native American legends or bits of folklore. And at the time I wrote Rachel's Garden, I was 8 months pregnant in July, and my husband was busy trimming a tree in our backyard. And the idea came to me based on the shape of this tree, which is V-shaped, that it looked like a portal. And by the time he got done with the tree, that's about all that was left. And I was very upset. Because the tree was the centerpiece of a circular garden that my husband and I had built. And I said, well, gee, what if a pregnant woman had gotten pulled through this portal? And at the time I had read a little-known Celtic wives' tale that the fairy stock is improved. And I don't mean Disney fairies. I mean the fairies you don't trust as far as you can throw them. That fairies would use mother's milk, human breast milk, to improve their stock, either for one of two reasons, that it made them somehow enhance their powers, their magic, or it would give them what they longed for, which was a soul. And that's a whole other layer of Celtic legend that I could go into. But in this particular story, the protagonist, Rachel, is pregnant, and she is in a unhealthy relationship with her partner. He's a bit manipulative, a bit domineering, and not at all what she thought he was when they got together. So that there the tension is created, and she knows she needs to get out of this relationship, and she gets pulled into the portal where she encounters an otherworld queen who wants something that no mother would willingly give.
Okay, but you have to read the story to get to that part,
Yes,
right?
you do. But in
Okay.
this scene, I am presenting, this scene happens where Rachel has just come into the backyard and has seen the desecration to the tree. And they're standing below the tree now that he's stepped down from the ladder with the chainsaw. And they have this altercation.
The chainsaw massacre. Okay, go on. Read the story.
Trevor swatted at a buzzing sound above his head. Rachel watched an insect land on his faded Yankees baseball cap. Don't move. For once, Trevor listened to his wife. Double-layered iridescent wings folded back against a sleek body dusted with lustrous golden hair. A band of black wrapped its abdomen. 6 wispy reddish gold legs dropped from the underbelly as the insect silently settled atop Trevor's cap. Rachel slowly lifted the cap off her husband's head. She sensed this insect was studying her with its dark ellipsoid eyes. I think it's a golden wasp, she said, cautiously turning away from Trevor. Trevor smacked the Yankees cap out of Rachel's hand. He stomped on it. Rachel heard a keening rise from the ground. No, you'll upset the nest. Rachel looked up. An angry stream of insects bounced between the twin trunks. The nest? That's what you're worried about? Trevor walked backward toward the house, barking orders at his wife while keeping an eye on that nest. Bring in my orange juice. Clean up the yard and get rid of that damn hive. I'm going in for a shower before I get stung. He slammed the sliding glass door shut. I should be so lucky for you to get stung just once, Rachel said under her breath. Tears mixed with sweat as she stood staring at her garden. Before Trevor desecrated the tree, it had risen from the center of a wide circle of large marbled fieldstones. Streamers of pink clematis had clung to its trunks. Now, naked vines hung lifeless against brittle bark. In the nook between the twin trunks, Rachel had fitted a meditation seat. From the crack in it, she had guessed Trevor used it as a stepping stool. Nearly all the hydrangea's sapphire clusters had fallen to the ground and lay scattered atop a quilt of green and gold hostas. The dazzling array of stargazer lilies that had burst open just days ago had all lost their beautiful heads. And then there was the foxglove, its tall stalks still standing like sentinels in Rachel's garden.
Very nice.
Thank you.
So I was going to ask you, and you sort of like answered it in this one, but we can expand on that. Where do you find the ideas for your stories and articles? Well, here you had a vision, okay? But
Yes.
Are they only visions, or?
No, often it's a place, a setting that invokes a feeling in me, which is what happened with Gillette's Castle. They come to me out of the ether. And what I normally have to do, which is my writer's challenge, is populate them with people with problems. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned already pulling out of Celtic and Native American lore settings. Sometimes it's sitting reading with my daughters, you know, and I'll think, well, gee, what if it went a different way? You know, and in fact, that seems to have been a trend recently with the retelling of things like Alice in Wonderland from the perspective of Alice's great-great-granddaughter. There's a new novel out covering that. So we seem to be retelling stories quite often in literature and film.
Yeah. Many times they had a different ending, and they had to choose which ending they wanted. And I just saw Apocalypse Now again, and I remember reading that there were some options and how that movie was going to end.
It's interesting because I often think that those books where, do you remember when you were a kid, you'd read them, and if you chose response 1, you went to page 10, and response 2, you went to a different page and had a different story. I think those would be fun for adults.
Yeah, well, they actually had that with computer games. You can choose which direction you want to go with the computer game to finish that. Now, one thing I was really interested in, you talked about your 6 Ps. So can we talk a little bit more about the 6 Ps, how that helps you with your writing and what they are?
Sure.
So like my little gremlins?
These are sort of the antidote to gremlins.
First of all, let's start. You say you have gremlins, and now you have the antidote. What are the gremlins?
They're the challenges that writers face at any level.
Writer's block or writer's challenges?
Writer's block, writer's challenges. They're the gremlins, they're the demons that creep up on you. But more so with the writer's 6 Ps, these come together as a method that any writer can use to overcome challenges they face. what they involve, the 6 Ps are passion, priorities, perspective, process, present mind, and perseverance. If we go back a little bit, when I started writing, I had a 6-month-old baby and stepped into Gillette's Castle and wanted to write a novel set there, not having any idea who the people were that were going to populate this story or what the details would be that weave through the story. I was pursuing freelance writing. I was doing copywriting at the time, developing my own business on the side. I needed a way to overcome my own self-doubts, the challenges that children and family life throw into your best laid plans. And what I put together was, okay, this is my passion. Understand what you're passionate about. You want to write. What do you want to write? Why do you want to write it? Where do you want to be published? Think about those things.
I like the part you mentioned that you were teaching your children or thinking about teaching your children to follow their passion, and you were not doing that, so you wanted to lead by example.
Yes.
If you can expound on that one.
Yes. I realized when I became a mother that what I most wanted my daughter, and now I have 2 daughters, to know was what is it that fires you up every day? What are you passionate about? What do you love? And to have the courage to follow that. And find out what it might be for them. And the way it ends up may not be the way that they planned or had initially thought, but if they're open to the possibility that pursuing their passion can bring to their life, it won't matter if they don't end up in exactly where they set out to be, because then they would have enjoyed the journey.
So I just thought of an idea for you. You're going to write a metaphysical children's book that you can read to your children and sell it to the market. There you go.
Oh, I'd like to do that with my children.
There you go. See, we germinated the story together.
So there we are with passion. And then priorities. You have to know what are the people, things, and activities that are important to you. And if your priorities are based in your values, then it's almost like setting them in stone, because you're not going to let anything shake that foundation of values that drives your priorities in life. Perspective. If priorities are the trees, perspective is the forest. You've got to see everything how it fits together. I can't be so narrow with my focus that I let other things like taking care of myself and going to the gym on a regular basis. That can't fall to the wayside. So I have perspective. Process. When you understand your priorities and you have perspective, then you can develop a process that works for you, whether it means getting up at 5 in the morning to write for an hour or doing it after the kids go to bed, and changing that process as for me, life with kids changes as my paying work grows while my novel's getting written. So the process ties into that. Running through all of this is the ability to have present-mindedness. This is a Zen concept. To be fully in the moment with whatever you're doing. It is so easy, and I know it's kind of cliche, but especially for women, to juggle so many things at once. But be aware of that you're doing that, and look at the quality of the outcomes that you're getting, and know what needs to change based on being fully in the present moment.
Well, you mentioned that you teach health psychology. What part... And I know that a lot of authors, you talk about author's block, and you talk about some authors have written because it's a therapeutic for them. So as a health psychologist or someone teaching health psychology, how much of that goes into your ideas about helping other writers?
Quite a bit, actually, because to me, writing at its base level is a behavior. It's a behavior just like going to exercise, giving up chips and soda at night, which are some of the health behaviors that I talk about in my undergraduate class that I teach at University of Hartford. So in order to pursue what you want as a writer, you have to ingrain that behavior into your routine. okay, and develop discipline for it. I'm not the most disciplined of writers.
Sounds like cognitive psychology to me.
So I have to work really hard at that. And once I'm going with a story, my kids will tell you I become the other mommy. You know, don't go in there, leave her alone. She's in the other world writing. And because if they bother me, they might get their little noses nipped by the other mommy.
And what about time management? Do you have a problem with time management? Because that's a big thing.
Ever since I started using the 6 Ps, and especially the 6 P, which I didn't get to, is perseverance. And we all can imagine why perseverance in this publishing climate today is important. I haven't had as much problem with time management.
We have the 6 Ps.
The busier I am, I find the more I get done. It's almost, you think if you had 5 days a week, 7 hours of the day to write, everybody, has this dream that that's what they need to write a book.
That's actually true.
I find for me, it's more, and it depends on the kind of writing I'm doing too, whether it's nonfiction, an article or a short story, or trying to put the layers of a novel together. And right now, that's my challenge, is I'm finding that I have to be disciplined in a different way when I'm working on this novel called The Gathering that I'm setting at Gillette's Castle.
So that's named The Gathering.
Yes.
Okay. And what's that going to be about?
I don't want to say too much.
No.
But I will say this.
Well, is it about Gillette Castle?
It is set at Gillette's Castle. Yeah. It is not a true historical fiction novel. It's not centered on Gillette's life and times. The premise is that the castle is no longer part of the state of Connecticut's Department of Parks and Forest Services. Due to the state of the economy, they sell it off, and it is picked up by a gentleman named Leonard Loki. You might recognize the name Loki from mythology.
No, I don't.
Loki was Thor's brother.
Okay.
He's the god of mischief and mayhem.
Okay, I haven't seen that movie yet.
Okay. So this
Portman.
is an odd little man who some say even resembled William Gillette. And he was no blithering saphead, which was Gillette's requirement that whoever was to take over his home, which he called Seventh Sister, was someone who could appreciate that with which he had come into ownership of. But he has, every year, up at the castle, on Midsummer's Eve, there is a gathering. And the invitation to the gathering is coveted, even though many know those who have attended come back very different and wishing they had never gone.
And I know Gillette used to have a lot of parties, didn't he?
Yes, he did. And often a Midsummer's Eve. And in fact, one of Gillette's plays that he starred in with the actress Helen Hayes was written by J.M. Barrie, who we all know wrote Peter Pan. It was called Dear Brutus, but it centers on a Midsummer's Eve gathering.
Almost, this sounds like to me that you could have written a Midsummer Night's Dream, was it?
That was Shakespeare. No,
Yeah,
this
but
isn't
this
Shakespeare.
could have been a good
This is what
location for
happens
it.
when you have the opportunity to walk through a door long closed, knowing that the opportunity you take will forever change the life you have now. So it's about the choices we make, the what-ifs that we've wondered about, and if you can go back and have a redo, and how that turns out for the people on this one magical evening.
And this is going to be a novel, or
This will be a
short
novel.
story?
This will be a novel.
It'll be your first published novel?
I hope so. I
Wow,
do plan to
sounds
go the
interesting.
traditional route at first, and which
Looking
is
for an
why
agent?
I don't talk too much about any of the other characters, because as I'm writing
That's
and I'm
okay.
finding things change.
But
my goal is to do well by the design and elements of the castle.
But when you say it, then you will do it. So that's important, okay? So yes, say that so you can continue on your journey. That's very good. Tell us a little, now, here's a question. Do you take any of your writing and your experience from writing, and do you put that into your health psychology classes? Does one have to do with the other?
Probably more than my students would like. It is a writing intensive course that I teach.
How did I guess that? Okay.
And which means a lot of grading for the teacher. We have, because they have gone through to read some of the articles I've written, interviews I've written with people like Dr. Joan Borisenko or Dr. Andrew Weil, because we talk about resiliency and stress management and behavior change and nutrition. And since I've interviewed many of the visionaries and pioneers in those fields, I'm able to bring my conversations with them into the classroom to make it a little more cutting edge, a little more practical and real life for them.
Okay, and we're going to complete the show now. Any last words you'd like to tell the audience?
Yes, if you are interested in learning more about me and my work, or perhaps hiring me to write for you, I invite you to peruse the portfolio on my website. I am also offering programs for writing groups and libraries and other organizations. So if you're interested in having a workshop featuring the 6 Ps and putting them to work for you, I would love to hear from you. Just contact me and mention that you saw Meet the Author, and we'll put a program together for you.
Great. Well, thank you for being a guest.
Thank you for inviting me.
And that's another show of Meet the Author.